color was amazing.
Oh, here's Yaakov.
Danny, how are you?
Harold is coming here. Okay, good. Bernie's in Cancun.
I know.
Lucky guy.
Is that our doorbell?
No. I think we're on page 77,
Correct.
exiting the base Knesset.
Yep.
Okay, let's gather the forces here. Jerry is here. Susie, we're on page 77. Page 77. No, Jerry said Harold may be coming. And maybe Saul. Saul's usually here early.
So it's not.
Here's Norm.
But people are on
Correct.
slips.
Yes, Bernie. Here's Mario. Walter was on. George Fishman was on. I'll have the tea.
Okay.
Thank you. I think it was quieter in shul during laning this week. Chaim wasn't there. Chaim, you weren't there. But hi, George.
Good evening.
Good evening. Okay, so we're on page 77 of volume 12. We're talking about during Kriyas Torah, are you allowed to exit the shul? Another question that arises concerning the conduct of the tzibur during Kriyas Torah. Last week we talked about not talking. Size here is whether one may leave the shul for some reason in it. The Gemara in Brachos forbids leaving the shul while the Sefer Torah is open. But the Gemara noted that some Amoraim did leave in between aliyot. This is Masechta Brachos, Ches Samad Aleph. Am Ravuna Bar Yehuda, Am Rav Menachem, Am Rav Ami. Mai dichsiv v'oizvei Hashem yichlu. Those that leave Hashem will be destroyed. Zeh ameniach Sefer Torah v'yotzei. That's somebody who leaves an open Sefer Torah and walks out. Oh, thank you. Ravavo, nothing ben gavr lagav. But Ravavo was an Amoira. He would go out between aliyot, between the 7 aliyot, when people are called up to the Torah. Boy, Rav Papa, ben psuka l'psuka mahu. What about the Sefer Torah is open? The Baal Korah comes to the end of a pasuk and stops. And you walk out in between a pasuk. So the Gemara answer is teku. It's not answered.
What's the difference between the Kriyas Torah and the davening itself? Why don't they ask the question, are you allowed to leave the shul in the middle of davening? You're doing the same thing. You're forsaking God, or you're not.
No, it's more stringent. We learned, Jerry asked, why are they asking about Kriyas Torah? Why not about the davening? So we learned last week that there are aspects of Kriyas Torah that are more stringent. The Sefer Torah.
The reason because of the pasuk. When you leave, who forsakes Hashem.
So what you're asking, why didn't it say the person who walks out in the middle of Shemona Esrei? It didn't say that. It said it referred to leaving during Kriyas Torah.
Why? What's the reason why you're leaving during Kriyas Torah? Because of the pasuk, right? That you're forsaking Hashem, right?
You'll be destroyed.
Will be destroyed, right? So by davening also, you're forsaking Hashem. You're
But-
talking about him, and then you're leaving.
But the Gemara didn't say it. The Gemara learns Oiz Hashem Yichlu refers to Kriyas Torah.
Yeah.
You're asking a different question. How come
Okay.
you're asking a question on the Gemara Why didn't it consider what now? It's clear that in the middle of Shmona Esrei, if you're in your silent Shmona Esrei, you can't walk out. You have to stay. We already learned you can't walk, Daled Ames. So we already have that din. You can't even walk in the shul. So that's clear. And we talked about last week talking. So we know that there were during we're on page 77.
Yeah.
We said during the Shliach Tzibur repeating, you're not allowed to talk. It said that. And last week we said during Kriyas HaTorah, you can't talk. Now we know that in Psukei de Zimra, you can be mafsik in certain walking down your aisle. He says Shalom Aleichem to you. You're allowed to respond at certain places in the davening. During Shemona Esrei, you may not, but at other times you can. So there's different gradations. So here we're dealing with walking out of the shul. There were Amayroim who would walk out between aliyot. Some did not. So the Shulchan Aruch codifies the ruling of the Gemara and distinguishes between leaving in the middle of the Torah reading and between walking out between aliyot. Says the Shulchan Aruch in Orach Chaim Kuf Mem Vav, Asur Latzeis Ulaniach Sefer Torah Kashu Pasua. So the Sefer Torah is only open when the Baal Korah reads from it. During an aliyah, between aliyah, what happens? You close it and you cover it. Okay? So the Shulchan Aruch very clearly says, while it's open, which is sort of a hint, which means, we know it means the guy's laning, you're not allowed to go out. But between aliyot, when the Gabbai is making the Misha Berach, shop your dummy. Shulchan Aruch seems to rule that you can go out between the aliyot. The Mishnah Berurah, though, broadens the prohibition of leaving during the Torah reading to include even the situation when there are plenty of other people present. That means there's no problem with a minyan, and even if the person exiting has already heard the Torah reading, the Mishnah also qualifies the permission to leave in between aliyot to be limited to cases where one plans to return shortly, or has heard the Torah reading already, and even then you may only leave in cases of great need. Just a footnote, in Talmudic times, the Kriyas HaTorah was translated into Aramaic. There was a Meturgaman who stood there, and they did it pasuk by pasuk. The Baal Korah would read a pasuk, and the Meturgaman would translate into Aramaic, verse by verse. This institution is mentioned in the Mishnah and the Gemara numerous times. This practice is still followed in Yemenite synagogues. So the Mishnah Berurah on the halacha that we learned, that Asur Latzeis, Al Zeh Nemar, these Vazveni Hashem Yichlu, whoever forsakes God will be destroyed. It refers to walking out in the middle of the laning. Umetagminon, and we translate Vazvei Hashem Yichlu as the Shavko Araisa Dai Yishtitzun. No, the Shavko Araisa Dashem Yishtitzun. The Torah of Hashem, somebody who abandons or leaves, the Torah of Hashem will be destroyed or consumed. Vafilu ikasara, the Tzais of Sefer Torah is also. Don't think that you have a heter to leave if there's 10 other people listening to the Kriya, that you think you can walk out in the middle of the Kriya. You can't. V'gamu kvar shma Kriyas HaTorah basra filach yasser. And maybe, I've already heard the laning. I can walk out. No. It's a bizoyon to walk out with the Sefer Torah open. So now, even though the Shulchan Aruch gave a permission to walk out between the aliyot, the Mishnah Berurah reminds us you cannot walk out if there's going to be less than 10 people left in the shul. and Shapir Dami, Hainu Shekashvar Shama Kriyas HaTorah, or Shaddai to love of the either you have to have, you can't just walk out. If you've heard it before, you can walk out, or you plan to come right back in. You're only going to be out during the Aliyah. And even going out, he's talking about going, maybe you have to go to the bathroom or some other emergency need. It's not just stam going out. The Yalkut Yosef rules the same way. You can go out between aliyos as long as Yesham Asra Biladav, as long as there's 10 without him. Mutter Lotses. Even Shehutzrach Lotses, since he had to leave, Avshi Hifsid Chelek Me'akriya, now he may have missed some of the aliyot. Enochayev Leilech Lebeis HaKnesses Achel Lishmoes Mashachitz Bekriyas HaParsha. He doesn't have to go to another shul. Remember, we already discussed this.
Right.
Kriyas HaTorah B'tzibur is not a personal chiyuv, like Megillah, where you have to hear every word. The tzibur heard it.
So whatever with the Shabbos club, when they leave usually before mafter.
Yeah.
When the Torah's still open, you're not allowed to leave. That's what we're saying, right?
Well, usually they leave after the aliyah.
After the
They leave after the aliyah.
So
Maftir is not really one of the Sheva Kruyim.
oh, okay.
The problem is, you do lane, Torah is open. So you can't really walk out during the aliyah. The jury was just asking about Kiddush clubs, when exactly do they leave? I don't know if there's any rules on that. And you're not supposed to leave. We're going to see, you're supposed to listen to the Haftorah the same way you're supposed to listen to Kriyas HaTorah. We'll get to that.
Yeah, but the only difference is the Torah is not the rice, and the Kriyas HaTorah is the rice.
No, we used to say the reading of the Kriyas HaTorah.
No, Kriyas HaTorah for the tzibur. I'm talking about for the tzibur for 10 people. It's not Haftorah. I'm not sure.
No, we'll get to it. We'll get to it.
Ask Chaim. He knows all those halachas.
Chaim is here. Okay. The Kivan Shutzrach Lot says, Av Shivsin Chelik Makriya, and a Chayav Leilech Lebeis HaKnesses, Acher. You have to go to another shul to listen to the aliyah that you missed. Shekriya Sefer Torah Chayvas Tziburhu. We're just repeating what we've learned before, that the Kriya is a chiyuv on the tzibur. The Biur Halacha compares the question of leaving the shul and the case discussed in Seif 2 of speaking during the Torah reading. He notes that the former case is more strict than the latter with respect to where the Sefer Torah has been opened, but the reading has not yet begun. And the latter case is more strict than the former with respect to in between aliyot. Let's see, the Biur Halacha is the Mishnah Berurah. Let's see what he says. Miloshan ze mashma, dafilu lo yischilu adayin likros oser mikivin shekvar niftach hasefer. This is a technical point. Once the Torah is open, even the Baal Korah hasn't started reading, you can't walk out. Even though in the earliest, if we talked about talking, that the Shulchan Aruch codified the law like the Rambam, that it's technically only once the Baal Korah starts reading. So we see in this respect, walking out is more stringent. Regarding leaving, it's worse than talking. On the other hand, the Biur Halacha points out that the prohibition of talking is worse than walking out. The Hachashari, here we said, Maker Adin, the Shulchan Aruch said you can walk out between the aliyot. But Hasam Asr, there we said you cannot speak between the aliyot. Yeah, there was one opinion that was matir, but the normative majority opinion over there was you shouldn't speak at all, even between the aliyot. Right? So here, Lenin Lot says, Kishi Pchusa Chomer Hachameyasam. So regarding leaving the shul while the Torah is open, it's more stringent. Even though from the Rambam, it also seems that the Isra to walk out is also only when he starts reading. The commentary on the Shulchan Aruch and Mashma Magra, the Bir Agra and the Shulchan Aruch also, the Sham Gamkin also Tekef Mishnah Niftach. We're more stringent regarding walking out, even when it's just open and not read. Imkain, binyanenu b'vada ein lahakel. So we should not be lenient regarding leaving the shul before the Baal Korah has started reading. Okay. Now, a subject matter that I'm quite familiar with. Correcting mistakes of the Baal Korah. The Harold, what was the Rabbi Brisman
Oh, yeah,
and his
that
sons?
sounds right.
When I started laning at Young Israel of Los Angeles, of Young Israel of Beverly Hills, where Rabbi Zalman Uri Zatzal was the Rav. Right after my bar mitzvah, a few months after my bar mitzvah. And I had been educated at Hillel, Hebrew Academy, which was Nusach Avaras Faradit. We didn't say Torah Emes, we said Torat Emet. But one of the demands, and Harold's father, Rabbi Yitzchak Katz, was the Gabbai. He's the one who stood next to me. He was such a pleasant person. He didn't have any problem. But there were people in the shul that corrected me, even when I would make a mistake by like hischil instead of, I said hitchil instead of hischil. I'm not necessarily sure. Right, but they were, and eventually that was a motivating force for me to quickly learn Avara Ashkenazis. But what about the issue of correcting mistakes of the Baal Korah? One who's paying attention carefully to Kriyas Torah may occasionally notice that the Baal Korah pronounced a word incorrectly. Must he correct the Baal Korah? Or may he remain silent and allow the Baal Korah to continue? Remember, we already discussed you can't talk. So one issue is blurting out to the Baal Korah that you made a mistake. Is that violating the fact that you're supposed to be silent?
No, what you're supposed to do is just read over the word the correct way. No one says, "Oh, you made a mistake." No one's going to yell at that. No one says that.
They just call out the
They
word.
just call out the word.
Oh,
what it should be.
But we have to find out that it's permitted to do that. Does it depend upon what type of mistake was made? This issue was subject to dispute in the times of the Rishonim. According to the Sefer HaManhig, who was a Rishon, cited in the Torah, it's not necessary to correct the mistake because it might embarrass the Baal Korah, and the congregation has fulfilled their obligation in any case. However, the Rambam does require that the mistake be corrected. The Shulchan Aruch rules in accordance with the opinion of the Rambam, while the Ramah rules more leniently that only mistakes that affect the meaning of the word must be corrected. Says the Shulchan Aruch Korveta, afilu b'digduk ois achas machzir no so. You didn't pronounce one letter properly. He has to go back. Says the Ramah, the dafka b'shinui shemishtan sa yudezeh. You mispronounce, for example, it says who, let's say the word is hey vav aleph, who, but there are many times where it's pronounced he. Well, obviously, if you pronounced it who, you got to correct it because it's referring to a she and not a he. So it's one obvious example where the mispronunciation changed the meaning of the word. And of course, there's many other examples. Avalim tob benegina satam. Let's say he missed the trop. O benikud, or with the you did it with a patach instead of a komotz, meaning the vowels. Ein machzir no so. Aval goyarin bo. We mentioned him afterwards. The term goarim means to scold or rebuke. The Eshel Avram writes that one should not be goarim unless the person didn't prepare properly.
I guess somebody has to make the call, whether he prepared properly or not, or it's just a mistake.
So the Mishnah Berurah explains that an example of a particular element related to one letter that the Shulchan Aruch requires be corrected could be if he added or deleted a letter. In such a case, he writes that one must return to the place of the error, even if he has already read to the end of the aliyah, not just the end of the pasuk. Even if he went to the end, but it was recognized that he made one of these mistakes, you go back to where the mistake was made. B'digduk os achas kegon shechiser o hosif eze os. You added a letter, like you added maybe a lamed to a word or a hey to a word, you know. Machzir noisoy sheikrena b'digduk. You have to read it with the right grammar. V'hainu ben kishu oimed adayin b'pasuk, whether he's still in the same pasuk. Ben shekvar gomra haparsha, he finished the parsha. Afilu birech lacharea nami ha'oila achrav choizer la'oisa pasuk. So what he's saying, if this person who had the aliyah already made the bracha after the aliyah, so the next aliyah you go back to where the mistake was made. The korbi menu, ulahalan atzoifa parsha, the new parsha. Or you complete the aliyah that had been made a mistake, and you add another 3 psukim at least from the new aliyah. Then of course, or complete the whole aliyah. The Mishnah also writes that the rule of not correcting mistakes relating to the vowels and cantillation, the trop, is not ironclad. In cases where pronouncing the same letters differently leads to a change in meaning, you could correct the balkoire. The nakat negina of the nikud, the reason the Mishnah Berurah says that the Shulchan Aruch mentioned trop or vowels, mishum da al pi roiv, usually eina in mishtani al yodam. If you lay the incorrect trop, it's not going to change the meaning. Uvenikud nami im ira sha'in nishtani yedezek gon yase bepatach kra or yase b'tseiri. If he used it seire instead of a patach, or vice versa, or instead of saying the word chalev, you said chalav, vice versa, or yoshev yashav chokayotzaben she'ini mishtana b'vadei machzirno so gam b'nikud. So anything that changes the meaning of the word, you have to go back and do it again. The rulings of Shulchan Aruch Ramah form the basis for the accepted practice for Ashkenazim and Sephardim. Ashkenazim follow the Ramah are generally not required to correct mistakes that do not change the meaning of the word, while Sephardim follow Shulchan Aruch and do usually correct the Balkore for any mistake in pronouncing a word. The Dakia Sephardim apoiskim kamachaber naragim lazaraf altos. We follow the Ramah.
Well, we don't really follow the Ramah. Most people don't know that. If they see, if you miss something on the word, even though the word means the same, they'll correct. They'll make a
But in the
change.
Ashkenazi community in general, we don't. We don't
You
have to.
don't?
You don't have to. No, unless
What
it
would you
changes.
do? Someone asked you to say, would you say it over again? If
Not a-
someone says you made an error, you know what I mean, on the word.
Well, you can't, in the middle of the lane, you're gonna go into a debate about it. So
No,
some,
but would you change it? In other words, someone said you made a mistake, but you know based on the halacha,
You were
you don't-
right. You thought you were right.
you were right.
I usually just go ahead. I don't change it.
You don't go back. and
I
change
don't
it.
usually go back. Chaim is very good. I mean,
Mhm.
Chaim and I know usually what we have to go back for. We do go back on certain things.
Yeah.
It doesn't mention it here, but for example, sof pasuk in the trop. If we miss the sof pasuk, we do go back and do that again because there are dinim that should be done correctly. So that's an example where the trop should be done correctly.
Mhm.
problem happens sometimes, and I think that's what, I don't know who asked the question was referring
Jerry,
to.
Jerry,
Yeah, Jerry, and it's a problem because you have someone who's very vocal but doesn't know the halacha. It's happened many times.
Right.
You end the pasuk and sometimes it's a kametz. When it's in the middle of the pasuk, it's a patach, and they insist on changing it back when it has no influence on the meaning of the word. And then you got to talk to them quietly and tell them to stop, which I've done because they're being excessively punctilious when it's not necessary.
correct?
Be a problem. Yeah.
We paskin like the Ramah.
Yeah.
So it's just there's a hidur. When there's a komotz gadol, you say vayamos instead of vayamos. The special way we pronounce certain komotzes.
Right.
So that's a hidur, but you don't have to go back if the Balkar didn't do it that way, and exactly like Yaakov is saying. Okay.
Bernie, so,
Yes.
you mentioned the halacha that I was hoping could see it over here of cantillations. This is very common when we don't have a Baal Koreh. A lot of times someone steps up and just, tries the best to try to read the pasuk without any mistakes. And often they can do that from a dicta perspective, but not from a trup perspective. So you mentioned about the importance of having the sof pasuk, at least laying in the sof pasuk. I don't know if it's in here where the halacha is. I remember learning the halacha a long time ago. I don't know where.
You and I looked at it. We actually saw it inside. You and I saw it
When did you
inside.
see it?
Say again?
When I talked to you about it, but I don't remember seeing inside.
I think we did. I think we saw it. I think we saw it. You and I saw it somewhere, either in the Mishnah Berurah. We saw it somewhere. Maybe we saw it in the Tikkun there. I don't remember. I remember you and I discussing that.
We discussed that. I told you when I discussed that. I don't remember where the halacha was quoted.
I saw it. After you and I discussed it, we looked at it, and I saw it.
okay.
I think I remember. I thought I pointed it out to you where we found that.
Okay,
So-
I don't remember that. If you do find it again, if you don't mind sharing it, that would be great.
Okay. Although you notice the Mishnah Berurah seemed to say that if you make a mistake in trop, it's not a problem. That's what he says.
Mhm.
Okay.
Right, so that's generally the case. I think the exception to that is sof pasuk, because you really can change the meaning of a pasuk if you don't stop, it's like think of it, if you're reading and you don't follow the commas, but you don't follow the periods at the end of the sentence, you really can change in the whole meaning of the pasuk.
I hear. So that's what, let me see. He said, Al roiv, yeah. The nokat negina, because al roiv ain't any mishtane. But if it's mishtane, even with trop, l'chura, the Mishnah Berurah is implying that it might be something that you have to go back for. Okay. What about the protocol for receiving an aliyah? Can you refuse an aliyah? Right? Receiving an aliyah to the Torah is considered a great honor. Or the Gemara, one who's called for an aliyah is obligated to go and may not refuse without a very specific excuse. According to the Reishis Chochmah Nechidah, it is proper to strive to receive an aliyah to the Torah at least once a month. Because one who receives an aliyah, it's equivalent to greeting the divine presence. However, this is not always practical, since many congregations number hundreds of people, and a person cannot request an aliyah whenever he wishes. So, three things shorten a person's life. Person is called up to an aliyah and refuses it. Or somebody is offered to bench with a kos and refuses. Ve'amanig atzmo b'rabbanus. He conducts himself with a superiority. The person should be humble. Sefer Torah likros v'nekor d'chsiv ki hu chayecha v'orach gamecha. Torah is a person's life. So if you're called up for an aliyah and you refuse, it's not appropriate. However, the Shulchan Aruch writes that in shuls where the one who receives an aliyah customarily reads from the Torah, which is customary in Sephardic or Yemenite congregations, if one is unprepared to read, he should refuse. right? This was in fact the original form of the institution of the Aliyah, that each person read his own portion. However, the current custom in Ashkenazic shuls is for a designated Balkor to read the Torah. Where the custom is for the person who got the Aliyah to read it. So that's a reason to be able to refuse. If he didn't rehearse the laning 2 or 3 times, lo yale. And he says in a place where the Balkore reads, the Balkore should prepare. The Mishnah Berurah explains that the Shulchan Aruch's rule applies even when one's name has already been called for an aliyah, despite the Gemara's declaration mentioned above, since it's more important for the Torah to be read correctly. Meaning, if you're in a shul, I don't know what shul there is, but maybe there are shuls like that, where the person who's called up to the aliyah lanes, and you are not prepared, even if they called your name, you can refuse. Says the Mishnah, lo yale, hainu aval pisha karu lalo, even if he was called. V'amru Chazal, Gimel Dvar Makatzrim Yom Shalom Ve'echad Me'em Mish Noisel Mosefet Eli Kros V'Nekar. 3 things shorten a life. One of them is being called up and refusing. But here says the Mishra Lo Yala. Shetzarach Metchil L'Sadi Ben Olo V'Naz. You got to rehearse. Bas Mechol Chachomim Akrod Chsiv Az Ra'av V'Yisapra Achina V'Gam Chikra. A pasuk in Eov says you saw it, then you announced it, and then you prepared. So there's a pasuk in Eov to say that before you lane, you should prepare. So it's not just practical that for a Balkori to prepare, it seems like it's exeris hakosum, that there has to be some preparation.
You know where this happens frequently in our shuls, where someone, once they refuses an aliyah but says he doesn't want it, is Shabbos Mincha, where someone especially if a Kohen or a Levi, they get called up or they're asked before they're
Hello?
called up, and they say, "I got an aliyah this morning," and that happens. I see all the time, especially with Kohen. So it is. I don't know. According to this, we're not even supposed to say that, because you sort of feel like you're getting the aliyah when someone else who didn't have an aliyah on Shabbos morning should get the aliyah at Mincha.
It seems from here that you're allowed to just go up and take the aliyah.
You're not
That-
allowed to,
that-
what? You could?
No, Yaakov is saying he's a kohen,
Yeah.
so he goes called up on mincha, but he already had an aliyah that morning, and there's other kohanim in shul.
So you should-
Especially on Shabbos.
Well, you gotta tell the gabbai that, but if he called you up already, it would be,
He called
I'm
you
not
up.
saying-
would be a
I'm not
problem.
saying
to
called you
refuse.
up. Before they call you up, like he'll look at you. He won't actually call you up. First, he looks at you and they say, "I got an aliyah this morning," and people do it even if not a Kohen or a Levi. So I mean, I wonder if this halacha, this protocol, refers even to such a situation that you shouldn't even say that you got an aliyah this morning.
I don't think you have, listen, I'm not a kohen. I don't think you have to. If you get called up, you
Kohanim have this problem. What can I tell you?
have a
Yaakov?
nice benotable chavero attitude, but I don't think you have to. Certainly, if you were called, I would not refuse. If you were,
Well,
Huh?
I'm not. I think I understand. You don't have to. The question is, are you permitted to? Is it a violation of this halacha not to refuse an aliyah by telling the gabbai, "I got an aliyah this morning"? So, like, there's probably other people here who didn't get an aliyah. And that's the question.
Usually when that happens, Yaakov,
if they
I
got
mean,
called,
they usually come up to you and ask you, "Are you up for an aliyah?" before they call you up. But I think
Right.
once they call you up,
No, but I'm saying in that circumstance, you're right. They do come to you, but should you say no?
well,
in that
but
circumstance?
you're not being called up yet, so I don't think
Harold
you're not
says,
technically being called up yet, though.
Harold says in Young Israel of Hancock Park, the Kohanim discuss before the laning, who got it this morning,
Right.
whose turn is it? So they arrange it before. I don't think that's going to be a problem, Yaakov.
Yeah, but just to clarify what Sai said, because he's also a Kohen and has faced it also. Is this prohibition? I think the prohibition is even before you're called up. I mean, if someone says, are you up for an aliyah? Do you want an aliyah? I mean, it seems to me here that according to what from Stachas Brachas, that even in that situation, you shouldn't say no.
Well, you don't say no. The answer I give is, I had an aliyah this morning, and leave it up to them to make the call.
Okay, that's what I do.
There's
too.
a big
You're right.
difference.
But essentially, you're saying I don't want the aliyah if there's someone
No,
else.
I'm not
There's
going to
a big-
interpret that.
There's
I'm
a
not
big
going to interpret
difference.
that.
Yeah, there's a
I'm
big
leaving
difference.
up to them whether it's my
Right.
turn or not,
There's a big difference with, I think if
I-
someone is
Ernie, people
called
like
up.
us, the Hamka, we don't have this problem.
No,
I'm
we're
gonna-
pushing,
Here's the
pushing
problem.
to Yisrael.
No,
Yeah,
Chaim,
push it to Israel, we hardly get it on the air, but it's okay. When they give it to us, we take it right away. The
Correct.
Kohanim have a problem. Guys, you should stop complaining about your problems.
Yes, I
Seriously.
know, it's first world problems. I get it.
You should stop complaining about such problems.
I'm not
Yeah, we're-
complaining. I just want to know what the halacha is, given
The
what we
halacha is you take what you can get in life, that's the halacha.
if you're called up, you go. If a gabbai is going around and surveying, saying, hey, who, and you're helping the gabbai, look, I got one already, we want to spread out the kibudim, as a mechuba, the mechabdes abrios.
I don't think that's a problem.
He didn't call anyone up yet.
Right.
If he called you up, you must go.
Right.
If he didn't.
I don't hear any question about that. If he calls you up, you must go. But I think that what we just learned extends beyond that. It seems to extend that if they ask you if you want an aliyah, or something to that effect, you shouldn't say no.
I
It's not-
agree. By the
it's
way,
not
I
that you're
agree
a
with that,
Kohen.
Yaakov.
Obviously, Yaakov, you're a Kohen Meyuchas, so you don't have that problem.
No, but there are some gabayim that know how to ask that question so that you don't feel obligated to say yes or no. Did you have an aliyah this morning? That's not an obligation to go up or not.
If that question is asked, I have no, but you're right, Si, but not always is the question asked that way.
Understood?
Yeah, they'll say, do you want an aliyah? You should probably answer yes.
Yeah.
That's the point. Because the answer has to be yes, according to halacha.
Right?
see, Chaim came up to me last week and said, here's an aliyah.
He wanted to give you a Kohen, Gerard.
And
What
he said,
happened?
and he says, it's my birthday this week. And what, I didn't even realize it was my birthday. No, I'm gonna have it next week, I told him. Instead, I figured next week. But it turned out it was my Hebrew birthday and the English birthday the same week. And it was my bar mitzvah parsha that week. So I told him, no, I'm gonna take it next week after the thing. But did I do anything wrong? Or should I have just accepted it?
Yeah, just accept it.
Just accept it.
Yeah. He comes to give, we learned today.
Well, no,
And it's a
so,
great
no,
honor to be given an aliyah.
I'm not sure I agree with that, Ernie.
No, it was my birthday.
But it
Oh,
says
that-
one who is called for an aliyah is obligated to go. Chaim is right. It's a technical din. If once you were korei, Misha noistim lo sefer Torah likros. That means they called him up. That's where there's a problem. I think all this preparatory stuff is less problematic.
I think in the case that Gerard's talking about is if I go to someone and I assume it's their bar mitzvah parsha, right? And I want to give them the aliyah, and they know it's not, right? And I'm giving them only because I believe it is a bar mitzvah parsha, and they say, no, it's not, and then they get an aliyah out of it, right? And I tell them, you're getting aliyah because it's your bar mitzvah parsha, and they go, okay, but it's not the bar mitzvah parsha. That wouldn't necessarily be proper.
No, but Ernie, I don't
They
know
want to
if you're
take a
correct.
charge for next week, Chaim.
I don't know if you're correct because of the comment that says the Mishnah Berurah explains that the Shulchan Aruch's ruling applies even when one's name has already been called, which
No,
suggests
there he
that the
said-
other ruling-
So there he said, when your name was already called, if you're not prepared to lane, you're allowed to refuse.
Right, but that suggests that the other halacha applies even when your name hasn't been called. That the previous halacha applies even when it wasn't called.
You want to be medayik like that? I don't think you have to be medayik like that.
Okay.
Means afal pisha karola. The Mishnah Berurah is going pumfakir, that the other way, that even though you might think that you should go up because they called your name, even though you don't know how to lane, no, you should not. You should refuse at that point because it's more important
Okay,
to
fair enough,
lane
yeah.
for the tzibur.
If someone comes in the shul and it hasn't davened yet, and he calls him up and sees a lot of times, someone that, prominent person comes in.
But that's
He
okay.
give him leave. It's okay to give
Yeah,
it to him?
why
He
not?
didn't daven.
Why not?
Nothing. It's okay.
Yeah.
A lot of times he says, I haven't davened yet. He's
That's
like, but it makes a
okay.
difference.
Okay, it doesn't make a difference. I don't think one is connected to the other. Okay.
Oh, aside from them having to make the proper bracha.
Birchas Well, they have to make a Birchas Torah, that in the morning. Right? Okay. What about reciting the bracha? According to the Gemara Megillah, the original custom was that not every single one of the 7 olim would recite the bracha before the Torah reading. Asher b'char banu, and the bracha afterwards. Rather, the first person called would say Asher b'char banu. The other 5 people called would go up and just lane. They would make the bracha. The last Ola would recite the finishing bracha, Asher Nasan Lanu. So Chazal instituted the practice that each Ola recites the blessing both before and after. So it's 2,000 years ago. So this is very old. Tana. It was learned in Masechta Megillah, Chaf Aleph on the base. HaPosech, the first Ola, Mavarch L'faneh. V'achosem, the last Ola, Mavarch L'achra. Says the Gemara, V'ha'idna. So Ha'idna refers to the Amoraim in Bavel. The Kulam Mavarch L'faneh L'achra. Each Aliyah, already in that time, they were making the bracha before and after. Hainu time at the Takin Rabbanim Gzer Mishma Nichnosim u'Mishma Yotzim. So there was a problem. People walked out in the middle of the laning and didn't hear the first person make the bracha. So they thought, people are reading the Torah without brachas. So, or they thought only one blessing is good. They didn't, because they didn't hear the final bracha. They instituted that every Ola makes the bracha before and after. Rashi explains that the concern was that people entering the shul in the middle of the Torah reading may not realize that a bracha is required both before and after. So mishuma nechnasim, meaning in general, there has to be made a bracha before reading and after reading. If the minhag would have been like the original, where only Ola 1 made the bracha, but Ola number 3 didn't say anything, right? And then he walked in and he heard the third guy, the third guy just gets up there and lanes and no bracha, yoimar, ain't bracha b'torah l'faneh. They would mistakenly, erroneously learn from there that you don't have to make a bracha prior to training. And mishuma yoitzim, and the Lord Sham was a choitzim of lachra. That means, let's say somebody walks in, he hears the first bracha, but he walks out after the 3rd or 4th aliyah, and he never hears a siyum bracha. So he might think that it's not required. Right? Rishon lo baruchu, the final bracha, yoim ra yotzim ein bracha b'torah lachra. So to avoid that, Rashi explains, that's the V'ha'idna. The Amoraim instituted the minhag that every aliyah has a bracha before and a bracha after. So what is the procedure for reciting the bracha prior to the reading for each aliyah? So the first step relates to the position of the Torah. Should the Torah be open? Should the Torah be closed? The Gemara later, Megillah states that the Tanoim disagree as to whether to roll the Torah closed while reciting the bracha. Tan Rabbanan, Poseach, you open it, Veroeh. You see where the laning is going to start. Golel, you close it, Umevorech. And then Choizer, then you open it up again. Poseach, right? Choizer Poseach, V'koyren, read the Rab Meir. Rabbi Yehuda Poseach Veroeh, Umevorech V'koyren. Means you don't close it again. You open it, you see where you're supposed to start, you make the bracha, and read. Now, my time at Rab Meir, Why did Rab Meir have this thing where you open it and then you close it? Kedula, Domer Ula. The one who's leaning directly from the Torah should not help the translator. Remember, we said that the shuls had a translator that pasuk by pasuk they translated it into Aramaic. So Kadesh Shaloyim Tirgun Kosev B'Torah. People might think if the Baal Koirei says something like that, that they'll think that the Torah itself has Aramaic words written in it. So Rab Meir was concerned, if you make the bracha while the Sefer Torah is open, people are going to think that the bracha is written in the Torah too. So he says, close it, and then make the bracha.
So we do, in other words, when I get a bracha,
That's
I
what,
open it, I leave it open, and then at the end, the second
I know.
bracha, I close it.
so we're building to that. The Gemara, the Tzurba doesn't know that you know the final halacha. So the Tzurba is building, what did it say in the Gemara? So the Gemara had a machloket, had a dispute between two Tanoim. What was the procedure in the Aliyah? Reb Meir held, not like what you did. You open, see where it is, and then close it and make the bracha with the Torah closed. Rabbi Yehuda did like you did, which was open and start and make the bracha there. And the Gemara now gave us a reason why Reb Meir said to close it. Because if you make the bracha while the Torah is open, people are going to think that the bracha is written in the Torah too. The words of the bracha are also written in the Torah. So people erroneously who are not educated, will think that it's written there too.
I would think the reason why you close it is you're helping out the one that's laning to know exactly where the place is. That's
No,
why you left it open. So he knows if you close it, he might get confused, might roll and stuff like
okay.
that.
But Rav Meir gives it, the Gemara gave us the reason of Rav Meir. That the reason Rav Meir said to close it and then make the bracha, because you might think that it's written in the Torah, Baruch Atah Hashem. Okay. Now, Rabbi Yehuda, who says leave it open, says, Targum Ikelimiti. I understand why the Baal Korei should not sort of help the Meturgamin say something. What he's talking about is he laned, then the Meturgamin said something, and maybe the Baal Korei understood that the Meturgamin didn't say it properly, and said, no, you got to use this word in Aramaic. And people will think that that word is in the Torah. So Rabbi Yehuda says, I understand people might be confused, but bracha is like a limiti. Everybody knows Asher b'charbana mikol, that's not written in the Torah. So no one's going to get confused about that. Okay. Rav Zera Rav Masna, halacha. So the Gemara concludes, what's the halacha? Posech v'roy mavarch v'korei. The halacha was not like Rab Meir. The halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, that you open and you don't close it again. So the Gemara wanted to know, Lema halacha Rabbi Yehuda. Why did you have to sort of repeat the halacha to say halacha Rabbi Yehuda? Mishum da apchiluhu, because there were opinions that the shitas were reversed. That Rab Meir held that you do it with the Torah open, and Rabbi Yehuda says you close it. So they wanted to say the halacha exactly the way the halacha is. Okay. According to Rab Meir, the one receiving the aliyah first looks at the place from which he will read, rolls the Torah closed, and then recites the bracha. According to Rabbi Yehuda, he recites the bracha while the Torah is open, and there's no concern that people will think that the brachas are written in the Torah. The Beis Yosef, right? Rav Yosef Karo, in his commentary on the Tur, writes that the halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Rav Yehuda, as the Gemara ended. And we are not concerned with what the people may think, since Tircha de Tzibur inconvenienced the congregation involved by delaying the start of the Aliyah. The Beis Yosef Jerry learns a little bit like Jerry, that by opening and having to close again, you have to open it, the Baal Korei has to find the place again, it's gonna be a delay. And it's a trouble and a delay for the tzibur. We always are trying to avoid that.
So by Chabad, when you read the lane, he shows the beginning of the pasuk, and he also points to the end.
Right. I don't know why Chabad does that. Harold,
From here
point-
to here, yeah.
yeah. Our minig or my minig, where I was taught,
Just
we,
where you start.
we point where we start. Harold pointed out that Chabad wants to know where you start and where you finish. And Nagel,
Oh, Levi, no.
when he calls up, he always is asking me,
Oh, where's it at?
where does it end?
Uh-huh.
Well, there is one
Yaakov, did you want to
opinion.
say something?
Yeah, there is one opinion. I don't know if we'll see it in Tzurba that you should know the beginning and the end. We obviously don't follow it.
Chabad though
But
does.
Chabad does follow that opinion that you should know the beginning and the end.
Maybe
In
the
fact, they'll
Balat,
stop you.
because
The
maybe,
Chabadnik who gets an aliyah wants to know, like he comes to a regular shul, I've seen it happen. He wants to know where the end is, and it sometimes can be trouble for the Balkora who knows where the end is because he has to know, but it's not easy to find until you get there. But there are two opinions, yeah.
so it could be, no, well, it could be the Shulchan Aruch Harav, right? The Balatanya wrote a Shulchan Aruch.
Right.
And we use that. The Tzurba has quoted that before, because sometimes he'll have different halachas there. It could be that there he's medayik that. I don't know, we'll have to see. But concerning the bracha, following the reading, which you notice the Gemara doesn't discuss, he notes that the Torah and the Rambam rule that one should close the Torah beforehand, since no delay is caused at that moment, though the Ran challenges that view. Says the Beis Yosef, v'chein posek Rambam, because of Shalach Shekor Gol V'achach B'vorech. There, the Rambam says at the end of the Aliyah, you roll it close and then make the brach. Much because of Rabbeinu. The Toma Haran, like the Tur wrote, and the Ran wonders, Allah Veliner at the time of Mishum Desvira lay, Dadkaloi Polig Rabbi Yudela Betchila. Rabbi Yudela argued with Rabbi Meir in the beginning. Rabbi Meir tzarich liglol ulevar. You have to close it. Rakach liftoch ulikros. V'tircha milsa. It's a delay for the tzibur. Hilkach lo tzarich Rabbi Yehuda aval besof shein tarach yoyser goy levakach levar. It's no. You got to close it anyways after the aliyah. You don't leave the Torah open. So there's no extra tircha by doing that. So there, everyone agrees that you roll it close. Now, how do we do it? Shulchan Aruch codifies the rule that the Torah remains open during the bracha before the aliyah, but is closed before the bracha following the aliyah. However, the Ramah, as explained by the Mishnah Berurah, suggests a manner to avoid the concern mentioned in the Gemara that perhaps people think that brachas are written in the Torah, even for the bracha for the aliyah. Kol hakarim mevarchim lefanev v'lachreya. Every aliyah you make a bracha before and after. Upoisech sefer kodim sheyavarach. First you open it up. V'roeh hapasuk shetzarach lahaskil bo, and you see where you're supposed to start. We also kiss there. That's the minig we kiss with our tzitzis. V'achakach yivarech ulachar shekar gol mevar. Says the Ramah, an important adjunct for Ashkenazim. Uv'shar shemavarech bracha rishon yafoch panav al tzad. You turn your face. Now, which way do you turn? To the left or the right? We're going to get into that. But he says you shouldn't look in. You should look either to the left or to the right. So that you shouldn't look, because again, we don't want people to think that the bracha is there. Exactly. Says the Ramah, nearly the afach panav l'tzad smolo. You should turn left. Why? The Shechina is to the left. Why do we say that? Remember, we learned already when you take your 3 steps back, what leg do you go first? The left leg. Because the left leg is the one that's opposite the Shechina. So when you say Osa Shalom Bimromav, you take the left foot back first. And we assume that we're face to face with Hashem. So we recognize that the Shekhinah is to our left because he's face to face, and the right, we're sort of recognizing that the right hand of the Shekhinah is dominant, right? The Shekhinah has a right side and a left side. So we're always.
Why is the bracha construction always on the right side?
They keep the brachas on the right. Yeah, they should
On the
be
right,
left.
it should be on the left.
Jerry asked,
Good question.
Jerry asked, if according to the Ramo, we're supposed to, and I do that, I turn to the left. Why is the brachas always to the right?
Because the
It's-
Balcora is to the left. Where you?
I think it's a great question, actually.
But the
You
Balcora
could
is to the
put,
left.
you could
Where
put
do
it there.
It's a great question, because I really don't want to take a look at you, Ernie, then you'd have to help me with the bracha. So,
You could put that thing there on the left side, doesn't interfere with the Balkara.
yeah, what do you mean? How are you going to see that bracha on the left
Exactly.
side, on the other side of the sefer?
You could have it standing up.
The Balakora has to move out the way.
Okay, but
I have never seen in any shul, and I wonder if anyone on this year has ever seen in any shul where the bracha is on the left. I've never seen it.
No. Ernie, you must be very special, because you know the bracha Baal Peh, but some of us don't know it Baal Peh. We don't want to make a mistake.
most people know that
Yeah.
bracha.
I was in the shul, I was in a shul in Dublin where the Balcora was on the right side.
Hmm.
It was the Chabad, Yaakov, you and I talked about the shul. The Balcora was on the right side. I don't remember where the brachas were on the left or right. They gave me an aliyah, but I don't remember. But the Balcora was on, I thought that was odd.
But the din is according to Ashkenazic custom, is you keep the Sefer Torah open and you're pointed to the left
Hmm.
because the Shekhinah is to the left. Let's see what the Mishnah Berurah will conclude with this Mishnah Berurah. I know we're in the middle of the Aliyah, but in the middle of the thing, but let's see what the Mishnah Berurah says about this, what face he should turn. Yafach panas virle, the kivan de bezel leka tircha de tzibura. By turning your face, it's not an inconvenience time-wise for the tzibur. Tov lochush kam bebracha rishona lachasha shelo yom brachas k'v'tor k'mo shekasafta kein zeh b'sif kot yud zayin. He says by turning the face, it's not a big tircha, and again, it's a way to so that the people won't make a mistake that they'll think that the brachas are inside. What is the Mishnah Berurah's comment about smolo? The Havi Yemina Kodesh Baruch Hu Omed L'Negdo. Like I said, Shivisi Hashem L'Negdi Tomi. We always have to view Hashem as if He's facing us, and our left is our Kodesh Baruch Hu's right. Nearly Simin Kuf Chav Gimel. New Yesh Achroinim. However, there are other Achroinim Shekosru Dafichas Panav Eino Nachoin. He says that it shouldn't turn your face one way or the other. The Mare Atzmo Ki'ilu Eino Mavarech Amashi Yikara. By moving your face, it's as if you're not making a bracha on Torah, but you're making bracha on something else because you're not looking at it. Rak al midi achrina, because you're moving your face away from the chefza. The yoser tov la'atzi meinav shlo yistakel b'sefer b'shas bracha. Says the Mishnah Berurah, and I've seen some people have this minig as well, that they're face forward, but they close their eyes. Again, to show that they're not looking inside the Sefer Torah. Okay. So let's
Summarize it. So what is it? So what do we do?
you do according to your minig.
Yeah.
I learned this halacha from Rabbi Krause 30, 40 years ago. I don't know in what format we were there, but and if you look at Rabbi Krause, he does, I think he looks to the left. I think he does both. I think he looks to the left and his matzim is Eino. Whatever, we have to watch that. Anyways, I think either one. You could follow the Ramah, you could follow the Mishnah Berurah, either one. Any other comments that,
I look to the left and keep the Sefer Torah open only in one aliyah a year. Parshas Vayechi.
Parshas Vayechi?
Yeah, that's the only aliyah. I'll leave his Torah open and say it instead of bracha with the Torah.
I know,
open.
because it's hard to find where to start there, because it's a Parshas Suma.
Right, because the Tircha de Tzibura.
So what, your minig is to close the Sefer Torah when you make the bracha?
Yeah.
Where'd you get that minig? The Ashkenazi minig is to make the bracha with the Torah open.
I've never had that.
He's a closet Sephardi. He's a closet Sephardi.
Maybe it's from him. Maybe
See,
it's
it's
from
a Spartish
I don't know.
it's a Spartish minig to close it, but it's the Ashkenazi minig to.
Chaim, you must have somebody.
In Rabbi Gonzal's show, they always everyone at Aliyah always closed the Torah, made a bracha. It would be rare for someone who wasn't in part of the shul that would come in and keep the Torah open.
What shul?
Rabbi Ganzlik's shul.
That's very unusual. I mean, at the end you close it, but not at the beginning. That's very unusual.
That's the way, 100%.
Okay, food for thought.
Okay, shkoyach, Ernie.
Elu ve'elu.
Yeah.
Take care.
So when I go into.
Everybody.